just go ahead and begin the session. Um, I see around 20 people have logged in. So, yeah. So at ODA, we are a boutique consulting firm again. So, being in the space of ODE for around 2 decades now, we were fortunate enough to have the ringside view of a lot of transformation efforts. And we can conclusively say with full conviction that OD is something which can bring about sustainable, long-lasting business transformation, and such is the power of OD. And what I believe is, yet one of the biggest challenges OD professionals face is to articulate how OD is different from conventional HR and L&D approaches, and to build a case for OD intervention. Now, because these questions are highly subjective, so we decided to have this webinar in a more of an interview format where I'll be the host. And after we have hopefully answered all your questions, we are also planning to have a 10-minute Q&A at the end. And to help answer these questions, we have with us here today Vijaraj, who is a partner at OD Alternatives, a very passionate OD expert who I've been quite fortunate to know for quite some time now. So welcome, Vijay. Thank you for taking out the time and being here today.
Thanks, David, and thank you everybody for coming in today. I see there's a lot of enthu response, so I hope we are able to help you guys with all sorts of questions you might have. Yeah, thank you very much again.
Thank you. So Vijay, before we move on to the practicalities of how to make a case, can you tell us formally and theoretically how exactly are OD transformations different from other organizational transformation initiatives?
Absolutely, that would be a good start. And so I promise everybody this will be the only theory part in the entire webinar. But let me just share my screen and tell you guys, show you guys a framework. Okay. So David, is this visible? Can you see my screen?
Yes, Vijay, yes.
Okay, good. So basically, whenever we talk about organizational transformation, there are 4 quadrants formed along 2 axes. So the change that happens can be, for example, at an individual level or at a collective level. This is pretty obvious. What is not obvious is that change can happen at an objective level, which is mostly the kind of change that we are familiar with. And it can happen at the subjective level, which we all know at some level is extremely important and is essential, maybe not sufficient, but totally essential, which does not get talked about that much. So on the objective side, let us say on the individual level, we have stuff like demonstrating desirable behaviors, achievements, tangible achievements, what are the tangible measurable skills and the potential. Whereas on the objective collective level, we have stuff like strategy, systems, processes, structure. We are already very familiar with companies and organizations who can help you with all these things. What often gets missed out is the subjective part. So for example, at the individual level, you might have seen people speaking a lot on these things like your belief system, your motivation, your feelings, your attitude, your mindsets, things like that. And the same thing at the collective level becomes culture, the norms that have gotten formed without rules being put down, the stories that have developed over the years within the organization, the stories that people bring to the organization from outside. And of course, things like values, vision, not those values and visions which get hung on a wall, but values and visions which get shared at real time within the organization. So if I were to draw a very clear theoretical line, whereas conventional transformation, conventional consulting focuses on the right-hand side, OD tends to focus on the left-hand subjective side. right? All of us know that this is very important, but the problem is many of the people in the mainstream are not aware that this can be done in a systemic, structured way. These kind of transformations can be brought in. Uh, that is why sometimes OD has a challenge making its case. But again, we will go ahead and see how we can mitigate that. But yeah, formally speaking, these are the four quadrants, and OD would focus on the left hand side more. I hope that helps.
Oh, yes, it definitely does. I must say that it is a quite a clear framework to work with. Though OD and HR professionals can clearly understand this, quite obviously. Uh, the problem here is how does one explain this difference to someone less acquainted with organizational development terminology? Uh, for example, like a business data. How would you put it in a more crisper manner?
Hmm. And trust me, I myself face this problem every time I attend some party or an event with my wife. Her friends ask me, "What do you do for a living?" And it's a challenge. But after doing many iterations, this is my personal experience. So there are a couple of ways I share it, and I hope it's useful. So basically, during organizational transformations, say the McKinseys of the world will work at the strategy level. Somebody else might come in and then work at the process or the plan level. Whereas we, as OD professionals, work to align people at an intent and a belief level. Because you might already know you can create all the strategies and processes you want, but unless there is intent from the people to make it work, the change can never succeed. Like I always give the example of traffic lights in India, right? So you can install world-class traffic lights, you can do research in 50 countries and come up with the best traffic rules. But if people won't follow them anyway, then no system, no strategy can really work. And that's why getting people's alignment at an intent and a belief level is extremely important. So this is the general definition. If I am having more of a candid, a casual conversation, another question I ask is very simple. Okay, I ask, what are the top three challenges that you have with your team? Okay, inevitably they will not say things like very tangible things like skill set and the number of hours that they put in. It will inevitably be something subjective like ownership, initiative, risk taking ability, etc., to which I reply that is exactly what I help with. And I'm sure as OD professionals on all on this forum, uh, that is true no matter at what level you're working with.
Okay. Uh, to kind of pick your brain, if you don't mind, could you give us an example in an organization context where this becomes quite a little bit more clear?
In an organizational context.
Yes.
Okay, why don't I give you two examples? I'll give you a macro level example and a micro level example.
Oh,
Okay.
that's
So at a macro level, imagine a huge MNC undergoing a digital transformation. You would have heard it now. It's happening all over, right? Now, the strategy is in place, the project plan is in place, HR has put up the posters, balloons, the cakes have been cut, but people are skeptical. They are worried that after digital transformation, would it mean that they would lose their jobs? The functional heads in departments are not really sure how the distribution, the redistribution of power is going to happen. They are worried about losing their relevance, losing their power in the system. Some don't even agree as to how these responsibilities will be distributed. In fact, without getting into much detail, I'm sure all of us have experienced such big, grand projects where from the onset, you hear these rumors going around. Ki boss, this is not going to work. This is never going to work. Lots of politics. People just won't support it. Like these are all unsaid things which you know exist but never get addressed. But of course, everybody will sign up to the plan. Okay, everybody will sign up to the process. But then what happens is inevitably people will start dragging their feet. There will be delays. There will be blame games that happen. And for some reason, the project never gets done. And even if it does get done, the processes, strategies don't really get adhered to. Things don't turn out as they were supposed to turn out. Okay, so this is one example at a macro level, at an organizational level, which needs to be really addressed. The other example, a smaller example, I'll give you an example about marketing versus sales, right? The typical example, marketing is keep gonna blaming the sales team, saying we give you awesome leads, but you are not able to convert it. The sales team is gonna blame the marketing team, saying you guys give us bad quality leads, and that's the reason why we are not able to convert. Right? Typical conflict which is built into the system design. But then let's take a very specific case. Okay, let's imagine that there is a big company who decides to bring out this awesome new product into the market. And for that, they hire a new marketing head. Okay, now she decides that she wants to assemble a killer team to really make this product successful. Now, she thinks that all the time, what she's really been missing is someone who can build things as well as roll up his sleeves and work at the ground level. So she decides to get someone from a startup. Okay, now this guy's joy lies in building things from the ground up using his own hands. Okay, then the marketing head thinks, well, I need fresh creativity. We have been working in the corporate setup for too long. Let me get someone who's really creative. So she thinks of this person who she's been working with through an advertising agency. Okay, very creative guy, can think at a very subconscious level, not good at numbers and so on, but can think very creatively. Someone she's always admired. So she gets him in. Now, this guy's joy lies in bringing ideas, bringing creative ideas, working at a subconscious level. All these things are naturally not data driven by nature. Now, while all this is happening, the sales team is in a hurry. Okay, remember that until now, in the absence of a proper marketing team, they have been the ones who've been running the show. Okay, so they always command that, boss, you just create the stuff as we want, because let's face it, at the end of the day, they are the ones who are supposed to rake in the money, right? So their instruction is, guys, don't trouble us with your ideas and your fresh things. Just do what we say. Now, just imagine what will happen. The advertising guy, he feels very suffocated because his ideas undergo 20 reviews and he can never be able to justify those ideas because all of them are at a creative subconscious level. The startup guy feels totally slowed down, as even a small change would take 50 approvals to be implemented, right? So eventually things that should have taken 3 weeks to be done start taking up 3 months. And of course, meanwhile, the sales team is busy cribbing that God knows what this marketing team is supposed to be doing, because earlier at least we used to get our work done. Now even that doesn't get done. Now, if you bring in a strategy consulting firm in this scenario, they will come in and provide an end-to-end business process to improve the efficiency. But note that nobody will care anyway, because their personal goals are not being met. The professional goals are in conflict, and their approaches, the way they approach work, they are not aligned. And plus, over time, they have grown to actually hate each other. Imagine, can any strategy, any process really work? And if their intent is aligned, somehow we create a miracle and their intent gets aligned, then don't you feel that they can easily come up with some process themselves? It might not be the best, it might not be world class, right? But it will work. And once it starts working, eventually in the future, maybe you can invite somebody to actually improve it. But if you do not have that intent, the alignment to begin with, no process is going to work. And if you have the intent and you have a process that works somewhat, that's more than enough to start with. And that's going to be very fast because people would want to make it work. That is the idea. So that was basically the example at a macro and a micro level.
So basically, whenever we have a team of people involved, OD can really help, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is as simple as that. And like I said earlier, right, that is one of the questions I asked the leaders, that what are some of the biggest challenges you face with your team? And they quickly get it. They might be surprised that, come on, can you really help with these things? I know there are trainings that happen, and but can you really turn the team over? And that brings me to another point. It is very important to understand how the conventional L&D and OD approaches approach the same problem. Okay, like for example, in the org transformation case, if leaders are feeling insecure, they are not understanding how to manage their team, how to communicate, probably conventional L&D will teach the leaders about leadership. Okay, whereas OD will aim to make them into better leaders for this specific context. And again, in the marketing team context, the problem was that the teams were not able to collaborate. They were not able to align. Now, we might give them trainings which will teach them about collaboration, about team management, but nothing changes. Whereas the aim of OD will be not to teach them about collaboration. It will be to actually make them collaborate, make them aligned, and make them come up with a process that works for them. So by the end of the workshop, whatever the workshop is, 2-3 days, by the time they come out, they have not learned some concepts. They have actually put a big step forward to start to collaborate, align between themselves, and come up with a process that they really want to make work. That is the basic difference. It's basically like teaching someone about cooking a recipe versus actually having him cook that recipe in the lab.
Oh, yes. So my takeaway from this is that real change only happens when there is alignment in talent and belief. And this is quite obvious that all of this is critical for any organization to succeed. Then my question is, why don't leaders appreciate the importance of coding? Why don't they listen to the OD professionals in general?
Okay, let me ask you this. Why should they appreciate? Why should they listen to you?
Because people are the most important assets. Their intent, belief, and alignment matter. It is the right thing.
It's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
That is the biggest misconception when you are talking in the business scenario, that business leaders uh, do things depending on what is right. Okay, and hence what ends up happening is we as HR and OD professionals think that our responsibility ends as soon as we have proved that something is right or good or noble or nice, right? Whereas that's the easy part. The real question for business leaders in the business world is never, is it the right thing to do? The question for them is it the important thing to do? That's the key question.
But Vijay, isn't doing the right thing important as well? What is the difference? What is the difference?
Okay, so let me just run you through an example.
Oh,
Okay, let me give you a few statements. Tell me if you agree. Okay, so paying people fair market price as their salary and at the same time giving those salaries to them on time, is it the right thing to do?
yes, of course, yes.
Okay, not making people work overtime, respecting their work-life balance, is that the right thing to do?
Yes, of course, yes.
Very good. Okay, leaders being transparent, not only sharing the good news but also sharing the bad news, okay, and treating their teams as adults, is that the right thing to do?
Yes, and I think it's important as well.
Very nice, good, even I agree. And then companies as a whole, right, focusing on long term value addition rather than just playing the short term game by cutting prices and offering pricing discounts, do you believe that's the right thing to do?
Though a lot of startups today might disagree, I think it's a right long-term game.
Very nice. Okay, good. So we have a bunch of right things to do. Right. Now let me give you a business scenario. Okay. Imagine that you are the owner of a medium-sized company. You have a great team. You love them. They love you. You would do anything for them, and you would want to do all these nice things for them. Okay. But right now the situation is that your 2-3 customers are lagging behind in their payments. Okay. So you are facing a cash flow crunch. Now, you need cash to pay your team's salaries and you are really worried. Let us assume that you need, I don't know, about 50-60 lakhs to pay your team's salaries. Okay. The month end is approaching and you really want to pay them their salaries, not be unfair to them, but the payments do not seem to be forthcoming. To the customer's advantage, they have some justification, some rationalizations, but at the end of the day, you don't have the cash. Now you start thinking, where do I get the cash from? You have an opportunity. There is this huge potential project that can come your way, okay, which can give you around 70-80 lakhs immediately. Okay, so that would be a great opportunity, right? But the problem is the price that you quoted to them, because you never wanted to compromise on your pricing. You wanted to show your value addition and then charge for that value addition, right? Not play the pricing game. So the actual quote that you gave them was around 1.5 crores. Okay, now the customer is saying that, boss, I have many other competitors. They are ready to work at a lower price. So unless you give me, you do my project at 80 lakhs, I'm not buying it. Okay, so now again, you want to do all the nice things, but you can't. Now, what do you do? If you decide to accept that project because paying their salaries is the most important thing to do, you know upfront that, boss, how will you do 20 people's work using 10 people, which means automatically you will have to make them slog. Even if you try to hire people from the outside, that's going to take 2-3 months. Okay, even if they come in, they can't be best in the marketplace, although you know that the best talent comes at a good price, right? If you don't go for this, right, and then you start thinking, okay, so should I be transparent with my team? Even there are risks. If you share this news and try to make your team a part of the whole situation, what if they panic? What if some of them leave? Right now you have compounded the problem. Instead of 10 people doing 20 people's work, you would be left with 5 people having to do 20 people's work. They would have to slog even more, they would have to burn out even more. And if you hide the whole thing from them, then would that be fair? Right? So all these things, everybody knows what is the right thing to do, but when it actually comes to business scenarios, there are a lot of constraints that are in play. And then the question is not what is the right thing to do. The question then becomes, what is the most important thing to do? And now just imagine in such a situation, if somebody comes to you and starts saying things like, oh, we should show compassion, oh, we should not make people work overtime, oh, we should be very transparent as leaders and share the bad news as well, and blah 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 blah, right? What would you think of that person?
I might probably give them a lecture on how the real world works, on being pragmatic.
Exactly, right? So you might think that he or she does not understand how real world works, that you're too idealistic, just a professor. Maybe they will not use the perfect words, but basically the problem is they feel that you are totally disconnected. And this is often a deeper reason behind why there is a disconnect, sometimes, not always, between HR and business leaders. Because the business feels that, oh, do these guys really understand how business works? Not always true, mind you, but often. So, like I said, a leader struggle is not about doing the right thing. It is about choosing which right thing to do. And that never depends on what is right. It depends on what is important. And that answer is always very subjective, because what is important to you might not be important to him. So in fact, this is a very common experiment that I suggest to people who attend our workshops or people that we coach, right? Think about this. As an OD professional or as an HR professional, as an L&D professional, what are the top 10 most important items on your list responsible for your success? Just, or maybe just think of the top 2, 3, right? Top 2, 3 things that will make you successful. Now just try to think about your business leaders list. Okay, what might be those top 2, 3 things that are important to him to make him successful? And now the interesting question is, where do you think your number one item figures up in his list? Right? So do you get what I'm saying? The whole game is not, it is never about figuring out what is right. It is always about figuring out what is important. And unless you can somehow tie your number one item to at least maybe his number four or five, or maybe you can show that for his number one item, your solution is the best. Unless this mapping happens, there is absolutely no way he or she will ever listen to you. Okay, you can come up with the best studies and best researches in the world. He's not going to listen to you. That's not going to happen. So basically, it is all about influencing his priorities, influencing without authority. And that happens only if you have built your social capital, if you have built your relationships with him. And then your opinion starts to matter. Okay, so we really need to understand that just by being in a reporting relationship with someone, as by being part of the same organization, a leader's time can be booked, but their ears have to be earned. And that depends on your relationship, your social capital, not on right and wrong.
Earning the leader's ear is quite a nice one. I know that increasing influence and social capital is a huge topic by itself, and we can definitely have a whole other webinar. But can you give us some quick tips right here today on how to earn the leader's ear?
Okay. And I think you might want to come because your voice is breaking a little.
Okay.
But yeah, but I think, yes, correct. So
Okay.
I'll give you some quick tips on increasing influence and social capital. And again, to the audience, this is a very big topic. And in fact, we are thinking that we should do a webinar, and maybe Santosh can do it, on building social capital. But yeah, for now, I'll just give you some quick pointers. Okay, just 4 questions or 4 points that you need to be taking care of, and people, you might want to just note this down. And so basically it is intent, empathy, perspective, and the role that you will play. Intent, empathy, perspective, role. Okay, and I'll tell you what the questions are. So I'll just type down the questions so that you guys can actually make a note of them. So like I said, intent, who are you trying to help? Right now, many times what happens is you think that you are trying to help the business leader, but actually we are trying to help ourselves. Okay, so another example that I like to give is, imagine the last 5 times that you have knocked on the business leader's door. Okay, how many times out of those 5 has it been to convey a challenge, a constraint, a problem that you are facing, and to ask for the leader's help, or maybe just to provide status on something that he told you to? And how many times has it been to talk about a real business problem that he's facing? Right, that proportion really matters. The other thing that what happens is, although many times we think that we are trying to help the other person, what is basically happening is we are trying to sell ourselves. Okay, we are trying to sell our idea, my idea. So do you do that, or do you do whatever it takes to solve the leader's problem? That is the question that needs to be asked. Okay, and the second point that I would say is empathy. Do you really understand the actual problem? Okay, what I mean by this is, like I said, right, in the case, in the example that I gave you, that how a businessman might face a totally different problem which you are not privy to, right? This really demands coming closer to the business. How does the business work? What are the various constraints? What are the various variables at play? Okay, if we are unable to do that, we can use things like systems thinking. We actually did a webinar last time on the same topic. If some of you guys have not been able to attend the webinar, do see the recording. But basically, tools like systems thinking can easily reveal these issues. And you do not need to worry about teaching it to the entire organization or the entire organization having to use systems thinking. If that happens, awesome. But even if you use it for yourself at your individual level, you can start understanding what are the possible variables, the constraints that your business leaders struggle with. And that will help you a lot to connect with the kind of problems that he would be really worried about, right? Rather than worrying about the ideas that you have and how to sell those ideas to him by hook or by crook. So that is something that is out there in the open. Okay, there is another very important item that we need to take care of, especially as OD professionals, and especially considering the fact that we are all very senior professionals in the industry. So our ability to sense what's going on has to be pretty high. So along with understanding what the business leaders are saying to you, it is also very important to understand what is not being said. Okay, I'll give you some very simple examples on this because this is very important. Let us say your business leader comes to you one fine day and says, well, hey, you are the OD professional, so let us do a nice team building activity where people can learn to collaborate, and let's take them out to a nice place and really get them together, right? So now you are all pumped up, right? And you start thinking about all the anxiety and all the kind of issues that the team has been bringing to you, and the things that you have been hearing over the grapevine. This seems to be like a great opportunity, and for a change the business leader has herself initiated this invitation to do an OD intervention. So you are all into about it, but maybe what you missed out is the context of this request. Okay, let's assume that this new leader has just joined the organization 3 months back. Now, it's very possible that the real ask here is that he or she wants to look good, wants to make an impression that he's a very dynamic leader who cares about the softer things. If you're going to try and bring out all the ugly stuff in this particular intervention, maybe he won't admit it, but this is not what he wants. Now, it's fair to say that, boss, how can we figure this out? So one of the questions you could ask is, well, that's a very nice idea, very nice thought. So you might have done this in your earlier companies as well. So do you have any suggestions? What has worked for you earlier? Now, often the leaders will say things like, oh, we went to this coconut farm and we were trying to climb coconut trees and people were catching coconuts in their hands and running around playing a game. It was a fun time, this and that, right? With that, you get a sense that the real aim here is to have a good time. Now, I'm not saying that this is important, right or wrong. Remember, I said it's never about right and wrong. What I'm trying to gauge here is I'm trying to connect with the leader and trying to understand what he or she is not telling me, but what is it that he or she really wants to achieve without being judgmental about it, right? Now, this is one case. Sometimes the opposite thing happens. Okay, let's imagine that there is this typical annual strategy conference, okay, that is happening for your organization, and all leaders have been given some slots. Now your business partner comes to you and says, hey, I have a 3 hour slot, man, and it's coming up in 2 weeks. Can you arrange some awesome OD intervention where my team can feel pumped up, they feel motivated, enthusiastic? So now this leader has been very direct in saying that he wants some OD intervention, which will pump up his team, etc., etc. But you, being a very sincere OD professional who is very genuine, you become over enthusiastic and you say, well, this will be a great opportunity. In fact, after the recent merger, I have heard people complaining about their insecurity. They're not sure about whether their jobs are safe or not. So this might be a great opportunity to bring all that stuff up. In fact, I'll make a list, and I know these amazing frameworks that really help people to voice their anxiety in an environment of psychological safety, and I will get some great facilitators, blah blah blah. Okay, now imagine what is happening. Because see, it's not that these things are not important, okay, but if those things were really important to this leader, he would have called for a separate OD intervention anyways. Okay. The very fact that he had to wait until the annual strategy meet means that at least for now, his problem is not the team's anxiety. His problem is the conference itself. That how do I bloody fill those 3 hours and make a great impression because all my peers are going to be there, right? So understanding what is not being said is also very important. There is a proper place and time for everything. Again, I repeat, it is not about saying that this is right or that is wrong, or this is important or this is not important. It is about saying that what is important to him right now might not be the thing that is important to you right now. And unless you have that syncing up, things don't work. Okay, so again, basically empathy is about not only trying to understand the real business problem, but also understanding what is not being said. Let me come to the next point. Let us say you have managed to build confidence that you have the right intent and you also have empathy. The next is the solution, the perspective. What perspective do you bring? Can you actually view the problem with a fresh lens? Okay, this is again where many a times it's not just local to OD professionals. As any kind of professionals, we tend to view all problems with the same lens. For example, right, if you ask technologists, okay, the solution to all the problems in the world is big data, okay, or it is blockchain, or it is analytics or data science, right? Everything can be solved with these things. Okay, does that happen for you too? Do all problems lead to only one solution? And probably that solution has to do something with fixing people. Like, for example, if only our leaders learned to be more empathetic and compassionate and understood the importance of mindful leadership, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe if only people learn to take more ownership for their work, right? Can you see how everything is not a people problem always? There are multiple things connected, again, like
Yes,
the
yes.
businessman example I gave. So are you able to see all these variables and bring a fresh perspective? That is what matters. Otherwise, your opinion is just irrelevant. And by the way, this is not to blame just this group or myself or you, right? Everybody does this. Even within the OD space, if there is some big author who, let us say, writes a book on vulnerability, right? Then again, the secret to everything in life becomes vulnerability, being vulnerable, right? Or maybe kindness, or compassion, or mindfulness. So everybody has an agenda. Everybody has some product to sell. But when we are working in an organizational context, business leaders want problem solvers. They do not want product sellers, right? And that is the gap that often happens. So can you bring a fresh perspective, or are you going to keep repeating the same old, bringing the same hammer to every nail on this earth, right? That is the point. And last but not the least, and this is a very delicate thing that happens when it comes to building relationships, but it's a very important thing: the role. Do you understand what part are you playing in his movie? So the first takeaway here is you are not the hero or heroine of this movie. Your business leader is the heroine. You are playing a supporting role. And I think the best way that I was able to understand this myself is when I go to this salon, right? Uh, Whenever I ask him for some suggestions, he'll give me he'll give me many suggestions to cut my hair this way or that way. Many a times he'll give it very proactively that साहब आप ऐसा क्यों नहीं करके देखते, this and that. But what I started noticing slowly was, even if he gave me 2 suggestions, 4 suggestions, 5 suggestions, 6 suggestions, and I rejected them all, he would never take it personally, right? And probably it's because he knows that although it is his suggestion, in the end, it is my head on the line, right? So I have to own the consequences of those decisions. So there is nothing to be taken personally. If I reject his 10 suggestions, even when I come in the next time, he's going to still give me more suggestions without taking anything personally, right? So it's not about you when your ideas get rejected. It's something to do with the leader, something to do with his challenges. But imagine what kind of a relationship that will build between us both, right? If he always takes it personally, if he feels that, oh, I am afraid of taking risks, or he judges me in some manner, do you think next time I'm going to even ask for his suggestion or even give importance to a suggestion. So that is what I want to convey, that always remember that you are in an advisor role, you are in a supporting role, you are part of the supporting cast, you are not the hero. The title of the movie is not your name, the title of the movie is your business leader's name. So we have to be very cognizant of this fact. So yes, these four things: intent, empathy, perspective, and role. And even after doing all this, okay, you cannot guarantee, you can guarantee that he will listen to you, but you still cannot guarantee that he will agree to you. Okay, that's another rider I have to put in there. I hope all this helped.
Yes, yes. And in my opinion, this brings us to a more important question. If we genuinely believe that OD can help
Hmm.
and have built a long-lasting relationship with an open mind with the leader, how do we convince the leaders about it? In a more general term, how do we make them agree? That is the
Hmm.
question.
So if I understand you correctly, you are asking me that let's assume that we used these 4 pointers and we have been able to build some sort of rapport. The leader will sincerely listen to what you have to say, but still it doesn't answer the question on how do we make them agree to our part, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Got it. Yeah, right. Valid thing. And so for that, I'll I'll make it easy for you. Okay. Now, please understand that this is a very subjective thing on how do you persuade people, but I'll give you 4 questions which should help you build most of your cases very easily. And I'll give you some examples on it. Okay. First question. These are the questions that are always in the leader's mind when he or she is going to make a business decision. Okay, I already told you it has got nothing to do with what is right and wrong. It has to do with what is important and what will work. So the first question in their mind is going to be this: which of my top problems will this solution help with? Okay, so for example, remember I talked about the the marketing team example. Remember? So what we usually end up doing is we try to sell OD interventions. Okay, but don't do that. Don't try to sell OD interventions. Try to find problems to solve. Okay, and look in very obvious places, because like we already saw at the beginning, right? OD issues lie everywhere. Wherever there is a team, there is an OD issue. Okay, look for the things that people keep talking about at the water cooler, but they will never bring it out in formal meetings. Right? That's basically an OD use case. Now, don't jump to talk to the leader that this is an issue to be solved. Ask yourself another question: what happens if you do not do the OD intervention? Okay, what is the business impact that will happen? That's your business problem, right? So for example, in the case of the marketing example that I gave you, right, what happens if you don't do an OD intervention? Probably the operational inefficiency will continue. Things that could have been done in 3 weeks will keep taking 3 months. That's a huge operational cost overhead, right? So that is the problem that may be on the priority list of your business leader. So always ask, what happens if I do not do this OD intervention? What will break? And that is what you need to make the subject of your meeting, not the OD intervention itself. Okay, now let us say you convey that this is the business problem, and I think we should do this XYZ OD intervention to solve it. The next question that is on the leader's mind is, but how is this better or cheaper than my existing solution? Okay, because remember, no leader really wants to rock the boat. They are already struggling with a lot of ambiguity, a lot of volatility. They don't want to add another thing to the list. Okay, so you have to be able to communicate that this solution is either as effective but more efficient than the existing solution, or it is as efficient, it will take the same time, but it will be much more effective. Or ideally, it should be both. It is more effective and it is more efficient. Okay. So for example, for this marketing team case, you could say that, hey, I was just thinking that for this problem, if we call in a strategy consulting firm, they are probably going to end up doing a 6-month project, and that's going to disrupt people's schedules. It'll need a lot of time and investment from our side as well. Whereas what I am trying to suggest is going to be probably a 2-3 day workshop. We might have some follow-up sessions after that, but uh, that's basically what we are looking at. And if it works, then excellent. Now, this opens up the business leader's mind to this new idea. But anytime any human being thinks about a new idea, the next question is how much is the risk and what are the chances of success? Okay, remember, risk and evaluating probabilities of success is always very subjective. In fact, the better the relationship, the more the trust you have built with the leader, the lesser he or she is going to ask you to provide evidence and justification. Okay, as long as you can make a case. And we again get bogged down that, quantifying the risk will need another 50-page PPT. Okay, real decisions get done in casual conversations, in candid conversations, rather than in a formal meeting with a 50-page slide deck, right? So for example, in this case, you could just say that, yeah, I was just thinking about the financial impact as well. So like I said, they are anyways going to take 5-6 months to diagnose and to come up with a solution. Plus they are going to bill us something to the tune of I don't know, 50-60 lakhs. Whereas this, the range that I can come up with is probably 2 to 5 lakhs. But yeah, that's what and plus, what is there to lose, right? Because if this works, then you don't have to worry about adherence. People will make sure that they adhere to the processes that they themselves have suggested, correct? Whereas even if the consulting firm suggests us a process, we can't guarantee whether people will follow. And we have many examples in the past where we have really tried our best, really brought in the best practices, but people don't practice them, right? Now that will probably work much more than all your data about 60% of transformation initiatives fail and XYZ university has come up with this answer. That really doesn't work, right? And if you have done this, and if you have convinced him that the chances of success are pretty high, and remember, it is okay if the chances of successes are low, as long as the corresponding risk is also low, right? So then the evaluation gets done along the lines of, okay, anyways, let me make my OD professional happy. Anyways, what do I have to lose? Now, the last question, okay, which many a times is forgotten, okay, but is extremely important and it will help you a lot, no matter what idea you're trying to sell, is the leaders in the leader's mind, which many a times he himself doesn't know. The question in his mind is, boss, how much of my bandwidth will this take? Okay, what will I have to do here? So as long as you can communicate to him that you will take care of everything, and instead of conveying your desires, right, we should do an OD intervention, we should take care of people's motivation, we should do this, we must do that, you just give him your clear 1 or 2 asks, not desires, right? For example, in this case, after addressing all the 3 points, you just say, yeah, so if you think this is a good idea, I will just need one thing from you. I'll construct the quote or get the proposal or whatever and send a mail to you. As long as you can just approve the whole thing, I will take care of everything else. Just imagine what this does for the leader. Okay, it takes a huge burden off. He just knows that he has to approve some email. The possible impact is 2-3 lakhs. That's the worst case scenario that he stands to lose. But if it works out, he's going to get to celebrate, and he's going to be very successful himself. He's going to be appreciated as well, right? So there is a lot to gain and very little to lose. Why won't he agree to such an idea? As long as you have tied it to his business case, shown that it is better or cheaper than his existing solution, shown that the risk is low and relatively the chances of successes are pretty high or at least decent, and that he does not have to do much. That's most important, right? And if you can do that, that chances are you will easily get your approval.
That was quite elaborate. I'm pretty sure that these 4 questions and suggestions you gave will help us get into a leader's mind, as you might put it, and it's quite an apt way to put it. and more importantly, to make a business case for OD. Now, to dig a little bit deeper, can you give us some more examples of OT scenarios?
Okay. Shall I take that? Remember at the beginning I talked about the macro example, right? The org transformation. Maybe I'll take that example. Okay.
Definitely, definitely.
What
Yeah.
I'll Let me do this as well. Let me also try and tell you what usually gets done. Okay. So for example, let me go back to the marketing team case. Okay.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
the typical but not really useful reaction to such a situation will be, let us say I start thinking that, boss, my leader never understands the real issues. The real issues are always people issues. I start talking about this at the water cooler. If I'm a good writer, I start putting quotes on LinkedIn saying leaders should really understand that people's aligning people's intent and beliefs matters much more than business impact, that numbers are not everything, this and that, right? And that's it. That's where my responsibility ends. A slightly better way might be that I think, okay, maybe I should arrange for some trainings, and you approach the leader and you say that, hey, I really want to uh, arrange some training on team collaboration and so on and so forth, and I will tell you why such trainings are very important. Or you go and suggest an OD intervention instead of a conventional training, but then you keep talking about why OD is important in this world and why what you are saying is the right solution, right? Instead of addressing those four questions. And of course, the best way would be to address these four questions tied to his business problem and try to make the decision very easy for him, right? So that is basically the approach. Now let's come to the macro example. Digital transformation initiative is in the works. The planning, budgeting is going on for that. And everybody is voicing this, ki, boss, this is never going to work. How will that leader agree to this thing? That leader really wants control. How will he ever agree to cede control? And why will that leader help? The transformation seems to make him less powerful. He will never, I'm telling you, this part of the project is going to be a pathetic failure. It will never work. And boss, even if this project works, you think we will follow all these 100 processes? The customer asks us to turn around things in the next evening, right? And these guys have a 10-step process. Come on, man, nothing's going to work, right? So you know that all these things are going around, but nobody's addressing them. All that we are coming up with is a great strategy and a plan, right? So you want to suggest the solution. Now, typical thing, one of not so good ways would be to say, boss, I know this is exactly what's going to happen. Okay, give it 6 months. I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. These things never work because our leaders really do not understand that blah, 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 blah. Okay. And like I said, if you're very enthusiastic, you will go and put it up on LinkedIn that when dealing with digital transformation initiatives, the most important thing is one must understand XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. Our role ends there, right? The second level is you sincerely go and suggest these OD interventions. You try to bring out 10 advantages. The leader does not understand what you are trying to say. What is this appreciative inquiry and what is this objective? There are so many important things to take care of. And what is this person talking to me, right? And it dismisses you. You take it personally and you say, that's it. I knew my leader will never understand such important things. But what do? I have to just do my job. And you go away, right? Or the third option is that you use these four questions, right? So you start by asking, okay, if I do not do these interventions, what will happen? Okay, now there is a big use case for you and a very easy benefit, right? So this is how a sample conversation with the leader will look like. Okay, I'm trying to address all these four questions here. So you start by saying that, hey, let us say, let's give him a name. His name is Amol. Okay, so Amol, I was just thinking, we are having this digital transformation initiative coming up, right? And wow, man, it's a huge cost. It's what I heard it's going to be around what 14, 15 crores to make this work. A lot of stake at hand, right? But have you heard around? People are like, there are a lot of power concerns going around, and people are thinking that will we really get support and this and that. And then he will of course agree that, yeah, I know, but what can we do, right? We can only try our best and just hope and cross our fingers that things will work. Can't afford to be pessimistic at this stage. We have to be really decisive and look forward. And you say, well, by the way, there are ways to get people on board on an intent level and align them, right? So we call it OD interventions. We could do that. And there is something called large group intervention. I'll not tell you the details, but that can actually help ensure that people's intents are aligned, okay, when such an initiative starts. And if once their intents are aligned at across levels, I think at least 70% of our challenges are solved. Okay. Now, and if, see, my worry is we don't know if this will work or not work. But what we are talking about is 15 crores at stake. Okay. So I was just thinking to myself that even if we spend those 15 crores and people don't follow those processes, or even worse, the project gets delayed, our loss is going to be much huge. So why not try, right? What's the harm in trying? Now that will pick his interest. Okay. And then you go on and say, how is this better than the existing solution? You say that, so typically in such cases, digital transformation, we arrange a lot of trainings about team management and about whatever, prioritizing your asks and whatnot. But when we talk about OD interventions, we will actually make them go into a workshop and come out with their intents aligned, come out with a common goal to which they have bought in. Okay, so that to me is a big advantage compared to what we have been trying out so far. And again, right, what's there to lose? Because I'm thinking maybe at max, if we have maybe 5 to 6 interventions at each step of the transformations, we are talking about, I don't know, maybe 30-40 lakhs. I don't know the exact figure, but that is what it is. So it's like nothing, right? Less than 10% of, less than 5% of the budget. So should we think about it? Because what do we have to lose? But if this really works, it will be a great thing. And by the way, I'll take care of all the details, but I'll just need two things from you. I will collect some codes, I will evaluate everything and send you the best code. And like I said, the range is going to be in this range, but you just have to approve. And I will create some mails from you to send out to the wider audience. You just have to ask your secretary to send it out from your email. Rest everything I will take care. I will work with the program managers and all to fit it in the overall plan of the transformation initiative. If you say this, would you think that the chances of you getting an agreement is much bigger? So that's the point I was trying to make. I hope this micro level and the macro level example helps.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. That's made things much easier to understand. Now, to summarize what you touched on today, you kind of helped us understand where exactly OD comes in and how it is different from other forms of transformation. Then you shared some inputs on how leaders think, how to build an influence or social capital, and make them not only listen but also agree. Thank you once again for your valuable insights. I'm sure everyone on this call found this really helpful as well. With this, as I promised, we'll about having a Q&A session at the end. I'm opening up this forum for everyone to pitch in and ask questions, and let's
And
kind of have
maybe
open
people
entertainment.
can raise
Yeah.
their hands uh,
Oh, yeah.
on the interface. So on the right hand side, you will, in the chat, you will see a raising hand. If you have questions, please raise your hand and David will invite you. Uh, is there any question? No questions at all? Yeah, you can. Hey, Karthik, if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, Vijay.
Hey, Karthik.
Thanks for the
Hey,
amazing session.
Karthik.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
One thing that I've constantly been deliberating, especially, working with tech companies, right? It's amazing how people are willing to scale in technology, but not willing to scale for people. you know It's the interesting irony. One, because what has happened is with tech, the instant gratification is so high that you can get from a cab to food to literally everything at click of a button, that the patience of actually investing in people is also going down, because people growth and intervention is delayed gratification. So how does one kind of really uh, build confidence for long term intervention, when people just want to fix the knee, they don't want to go for the surgery, they
Hmm.
just want to say कि यार let's pop in some medicines and see if this can run for a while, right? How does one address that in this?
Got it. So again, I come a lot of my life has been spent in the technology sector, right? So I can absolutely understand what you mean, and I agree with the situation. But I think there are two, three dimensions to this. So number one is the truth of the situation itself. Like you yourself said, people do not try to scale in technology because it is right. They scale in technology because it's easy. Okay, and that's why most startups, the first question they'll ask themselves is, how scalable is this? And that's why you will not see people consulting startups really getting a lot of funding, but you will see technology startup, and even then, if it is a SaaS kind of offering, you or a product, then you will see them getting funding, because by the very nature of the model, the scaling focus is on the technology, not on the people. The people are a means to achieve success. So, first of all, I would suggest keeping that in our mind. Okay, that we have to agree that people are the means here, unlike, let us say, a services organization where people are the biggest assets. So, people are the means. Second, uh, like I said, what has worked for me. So, for example, not for a SaaS thing, but I was part of a data governance project uh, a long time back, and which was in turn part of a huge digital transformation initiative. So they had 100 things to do. We struggled saying, boss, you called us for data governance. We are doing data governance. Nobody's paying attention. What works is tying it to their impact. So if we try to say that, yeah, you always, like, I know you will not use those words, but basically if our message is indirectly conveying that you are going for short-term fixes, you are taking a painkiller rather than a surgery and this and that, it doesn't work usually. But if I can tie it, for example, I would say that, wow, man, the next release is very ambitious, right? In the past two releases, we were trying to scale from 1,000 users to 10,000 users. And this time it's what, 500,000 users. Wow, man, that is huge stake. And the good news is we have got the funding for it. But this is a make or break situation, I guess, because if we fail anywhere in this, it's going to be full stop, right? And then the leader says yes, and then I say, I'm just trying to recollect what were the challenges. Remember last time people had burnout issues, and at the main moment people were leaving, and some of them were saying, this is not what I signed up for, blah blah blah, right? Always, it eventually always boils down to some people friction or the other, right? I'm just trying to think that, can we do something to avoid it this time, because this time the stakes are 10 times higher, yeah. So I was just thinking, can we do something to mitigate this? Probably you will have his or her ear now. The third thing is priority. Okay, so when we talk about long-term thing, at least this is my personal experience, and maybe somebody else would have a better idea. But I try to live with the fact that I can only influence, I can't change a person. So if what I'm suggesting is number 10 in his list, and his top priority is number 1, I could come up from number 10 to number 6 or even number 4, but I can't really come up to number one. That's not going to happen. So I would be also mindful of the fact that how much mind space does he have at this moment to solve all kind of issues. Although the long term focus is very important, uh, if I try to tell all that to him right now when his mind is in a tizzy, it's anyways going to fail. Plus, I might end up reducing my social capital because he will feel disconnected. कि यार इसको समझ भी आता है क्या कि what are our current priorities and fires, right? This guy is talking about 5 years down the line. So I would be cognizant of that. Number two, but I would also be cognizant of the fact that even though I am suggesting some quick interventions to help him achieve his next release or next product release version, the very fact that he agreed to me, I did something and it really worked, is going to make my social capital shoot up. And next time, if instead of thinking 3 months down the line, if I try to think 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line, he's probably going to be a little more open. But again, I have to be cognizant of the fact that this does take some time. uh, I haven't found a very quick fix way to that, but yeah, it's a combination of time, patience, and empathizing with what is the leader's current burning priority. I don't know if that helps. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. In fact, so probably that's what I've been also doing. I mean, like,
Hmm.
securing quick wins help.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
So what you could do is probably have milestones. So it might take 2 years, but there could be multiple milestones which they can see every 3 months,
Hmm.
which kind of at least keeps them hooked. So
Yes.
that marriage kind of thing works better. So it's more like a pit stop. So okay, we
Yes.
want to win the championship. Let's win this lap. Okay, what's the next lap? So I've been kind of using that, and that's still, I'm like, better. Uh,
Hmm.
and I guess a middle ground, I guess.
Yeah, and if you can just accept that fact, it really helps, because I have also seen many people trying what is realistic, but at the back of their mind somewhere they have this regret. कि यार we are really not solving the root cause issue here. But the problem is that root cause issue is the issue in my mind. It is not the issue in the leader's mind. So
Yeah.
the pit stop is what they care about, and that's totally fine. We are part of a team.
Just to, in fact, tell you, how I tried recently, and it kind of has worked once. Definitely, it comes from, again, researches. Is there's too much pressure on the leader and organization to engage people, and which is putting people into a Cinderella syndrome, that
Hmm.
someone is going to come and save me,
Hmm.
right? So instead of in surveys asking, is your manager doing enough to engage you? Is he recognizing you? The kind of questions we have asked people is, are you doing enough to stay motivated at work?
Hmm.
Are
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
trying to connect with did you do your best to connect with the most positive people at work?
Hmm.
Did you do your best to stay engaged?
Hmm.
And asking them that, make them the owners of their destiny,
Hmm.
and motivation, and reversing the ownership on them.
Hmm.
Because their organization is, literally serving you with technology, with all kinds of benefits,
Hmm.
salary increments, incentives, and then the burden of even engaging you lies with me, which
Hmm.
almost makes it like a crutch.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Isn't it time that if 70% people took ownership of themselves, we can actually focus on vision mission,
Yeah, so
where
make people own their careers rather than we trying
the
to.
kind of questions
Yeah.
we ask,
Hmm.
where they doing enough, and
Gone. You're right.
self control, self distant kind of a mindset.
Correct. Correct. Although not an intervention based approach, but yeah, I like this approach on an overall theme, that why not make people the owners rather than treat them like
Yeah, because all
yeah,
engagement
children to the
surveys
system.
ask one thing:
Hmm.
is organization doing enough? But nobody is asking, are people themselves doing enough?
Themselves doing
As you
enough.
said, eventually people are
Correct.
going
Correct.
to do it if they believe it. But your
Yeah.
questions also instill a lot of belief systems.
Hmm.
So maybe
True. True.
asking
True.
right
True.
questions and not giving answers is what we need to do as OD people.
True. 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 Totally agree. Thanks for that input. And yes, any other questions?
Um,
Please feel free. Yeah.
Hi Vijay, this is Hitasha. So I'll just add on to what Karthik has just mentioned. So
Mm,
we do that in BCG very often. We have podcasts kind of running in offices where we, especially in the time of goal setting, where we have this thing where we say that, own your career.
mm,
At the same point of time, though we do emphasize that it's people who also have to ask the right questions, not just talk something in the breakout area with only a set of people. We also make them realize that go to the relevant people and ask, just directly questioning. I mean, you own it. It's your team, it's your organization. At the same point of time, your career as well. But at the same point of time, I mean, to the leadership as well. I mean, so parallelly these things are happening because it's an entire ecosystem. Sometimes you also have to realize that people are not questioning the leaders because maybe the ecosystem is not that comfortable for people to come up and ask such questions to maybe the relevant people, maybe to HR, or maybe to anyone. So what I'm saying is that what Karthik has just mentioned, we do that really often, and that works for us because it's also about making people realize that that it's mutually
Correct.
mutually we
It's
are
a two-way
responsible
street.
for the. It's a two-way street. It's like this because more often than not, people do not have this understanding and this kind of mirror when you show to people. It's required and it helps. It helps. It helps. A lot of times.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we go on to more inputs and suggestions, I just want to make sure, does somebody have any question? Because then I would want to field that question and then share some inputs. Does anybody have a question on what we discussed?
Question, but love the two frameworks that you shared. I loved it. I've actually taken screenshots of it and even shared it with the team that, business partnering, can we always keep these at the back of our mind? So that that 8 questions are my biggest takeaway. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Very welcome. Yes. And I would always, if you are not able to think of questions, and because this is going to be your chance, everybody on the call, I would suggest maybe you can try thinking, what is it that you will do on Monday? Okay, to move closer towards what you really wanted to make work. And if you are thinking that, yeah, but all this will not work in my case, then you can please feel free to field that question. If you think these 8 questions help you a lot and you're looking forward to the Monday, then amazing. No pressure. Okay. Yeah. Then I don't think there is any question left now. What time are we at? Okay, we are at 11:47 right now. I think we can end this. David, should we go ahead and end this?
Yes, if nobody
Thanks, Karthik. Thanks,
else
Vijaraj,
has
for sharing your
anything
insights.
else.
Yeah. Yes, I hope this
Okay.
was really useful. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Thank you,
guys,
Natasha.
just a note from us that, so basically the aim of this initiative is we are trying to bring up these webinars so that we can have a very sincere and deep dialogue around how to make OD work and bring it into the mainstream rather than keep it on the side as some ideal thing that needs to be done but is never done and the blame lies on the leaders or etc. We want to bring in that dialogue at the center of the discussion, and that is where we are trying to, the last session that we did was a webinar on systems thinking. But yeah, if you feel that this is useful for you, do share it with your peer, your networks, because we would really want people to be involved in this sort of discussion. So yeah, that's just a request from our side. And do give us your feedback if on some other questions or kind of sessions that you would want us to do in the future. I think the next session is going to be a session on building social capital, which will be taken by Santosh, which I'm sure many of you would welcome. But if there are other topics, other questions that you struggle with as OD professionals within your organization, feel free to shoot a mail to me or to David, and we'll try to schedule that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vijay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.